What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we have a good one for you. We are going over players that are currently being overdrafted. Each and every year, there are several of these players in the draft that end up crippling our teams. Some of them are due to an inflated name value. Others may have too much risk when compared to their ADP. And oftentimes with these types of players, we're paying for production that we've seen in years past. When going through this list, you'll definitely notice a trend. These are the types of names you could see your league mates targeting, and you can't really blame them. They've been producers in the league. Many could see their dip in ADP as a place to extract value, and for most of these players, they've already helped people win championships in previous seasons. Before we do get into the video though, stat of the day. Yesterday's stat of the day was which wide receiver clocked in with the highest top speed in 2019. The correct answer was Cordarrelle Patterson, 22.23 miles per hour in week 2. Congratulations, Adrian Moore, you got this one right. As for today's stat of the day, which quarterback had the lowest percentage of aggressive plays downfield? Leave your answer in the comment section down below. We'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. With that out of the way though, let's hop right into the video, and the first player may be a bit shocking to hear, but it's Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now don't get it mistaken, I don't believe that he's a player you should be overall avoiding. In fact, he's definitely one of the most talented receivers in the league. He is now the second player in NFL history to post 6 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons since entering the league. The only other receiver outside of Evans, that's Randy Moss. And this season, if he's able to compile 1,000 yards, he will be the first receiver in NFL history to do so. I don't think 1,000 receiving yards is a lofty task for Evans this season, but 1,000 receiving yards may not exactly be enough to warrant where exactly he goes on draft day. Currently, Evans is coming off the board as the wide receiver 9. We wouldn't say that ADP is extremely inflated, however, it is several spots above where we currently have him ranked. Either way though, just because we have him a few spots lower, that to me wouldn't be enough to deem him as a player to be possibly overdrafted in 2020. Part of the reason why I do believe that is because Mike Evans is a player a lot of people are going to be targeting. Your home leagues, they'll value the safety in his name, compare him to some of the receivers that are being drafted ahead of him, and you can easily see how some of your league mates may opt to draft Evans over some of these receivers who may be better picks, but may not exactly be as proven. Taking a look at some names, we have the wide receiver 8, Allen Robinson, wide receiver 7, Kenny Golladay, even all the way up to wide receiver 6, Chris Godwin. I know there are people out there that despite Chris Godwin outproducing Evans while both were on the field, some people will still be drafting Evans over Chris Godwin, and that's already pushing up to the wide receiver 6. Frankly, if anyone takes Mike Evans at that spot, you're potentially going to be putting your team at a disadvantage. Mike Evans is going to have to play at or around his ceiling in order for him to produce at that level, and because of that, you are not factoring in any of the risk factors associated with him, which have to be fully taken into consideration and have a major impact on his ranking in ADP. Those risk factors, for starters, he has a new quarterback, Tom Brady. Yes, he is the greatest quarterback of all time, but a new quarterback learning a new offense, having to build chemistry with a new receiver, it presents a certain level of risk. If there were a quarterback who's able to overcome that, it more than likely is Tom Brady, but you'd be a sucker to head into the season automatically assuming that. While I'm not overly concerned with the chemistry in the long term when it comes to the full season, the shortened offseason, the brand new offense, Tom Brady being 43 years old. He's played for just one coach in his entire career in one team, so although he's smart enough and experienced enough to head into the season with a strong start, would we be all that surprised if he did struggle in the early weeks? I don't think so. It is worth noting though, Tom Brady and Mike Evans, they did get together for private training sessions. While that's definitely something pointing in a positive direction, we still can't compare that to what we're used to getting from training reps in the offseason programs. So in this season more than ever, teams with free agents, teams shaking up the offenses, they're unfortunately going to be at a disadvantage. The offense itself, while I do expect it to be strong and have plenty of scoring opportunities, the overall passing volume, it's bound to decrease from what we saw last season. Jameis Winston, he threw the ball 626 times last year. There was over 5,000 receiving yards up for grabs. Heading into this year though, don't count on it. Winston, not only did he throw for 33 touchdowns touchdowns, he also had 30 interceptions. A direct result of that does force the team to be throwing the ball late, and part of the reason they wanted to let Jameis Winston go and get in a savvy veteran, somebody who can take care of the football, drive the ball down the field consistently, but while also not making those costly mistakes that cost the Tampa Bay Buccaneers several games throughout the season. Tom Brady, he's not going to have to do as much, and the offense can still be efficient, but that will come at the expense of overall opportunities. Mike Evans historically has always been a more volume receiver, not super efficient on a per target basis, so in order for him to post those mid wide receiver 1 type numbers, it's going to come on the back of efficiency. With all that being said, Mike Evans still has a strong chance to overcome all of those obstacles, but we should never be reaching in the early rounds, and if somebody in your league does and they take Mike Evans out of position, that's just going to open up opportunities for value elsewhere. Moving on, and the next player we have is Jared Cook of the New Orleans Saints, who has now been a fantasy relevant tight end for 2 straight years. 2018, he had a very respectable season with Derek Carr and the Raiders, and last season, while it did have his ups and downs, he was able to average a whopping 10.4 half PPR points, which not only outpaced his very successful season in 2018, but it was actually the highest average he was able to compile throughout his entire career. His career, it's pretty long. He's been in the league since 2009. This stint with the Saints is going to be his 5th team in the NFL. And at 33 years old, he's going to be one of the oldest doing it. There are 2 stages in the draft in which we've been typically targeting our tight ends. There's George Kittle and Travis Kelce in the early rounds. Obviously, there is a bit of risk involved when investing that type of draft capital into a tight end. It will be at the expense of one of the top producers at the running back or wide receiver positions, but we've seen those picks pay off. Preferably though, we do like to wait for the double-digit rounds, targeting players like TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, Blake Jarwin, Jonnu Smith. Quietly, this season for tight ends, it's actually one of the deeper seasons we've had. Even looking outside the top 20, Eric Ebron, Chris Herndon, there is no shortage of players that could potentially be consistent producers that you can get virtually for free. As for Jared Cook, he did produce last season, finishing as the tight end 7, so when seeing that he can be drafted as the tight end 10, people in your leagues may see that as a sign that they can get value. There is a certain level of peace of mind that you do get from securing a tight end that you can just lock in every week, and when most people think Jared Cook, that's exactly what they see. But like I said, a lot of tight ends do this season. The only difference is Jared Cook is likely going to be a player that some people in your leagues are going to reach on. He's somewhat of a household name. He has likely been on one of your league mates' teams in past seasons and produced, and when looking just at the past 2 seasons, most people are going to be chasing those points, drafting him with the expectation that they're just going to lock him in each and every week, pushing for the consistency and upside of those top 5 guys, and people will pay a premium for that. Evan Engram, Hunter Henry, those players, they're tough to trust. If you draft them, you are almost obligated to take a backup tight end. 2 other names of tight ends that are being drafted ahead of him, Tyler Higbee, Hayden Hurst, obviously players with much more upside, but overall they are unproven. So considering that each of the 4 tight ends being drafted ahead of them do come with significant question marks, Jared Cook is easily the type of player I could see people reaching for on draft day. In reality though, his 2019 production is in no way guaranteed. He is one of the largest regression candidates of the 2020 season. His success, it was on the back of extreme efficiency. Cook himself, he ranked 16th in targets, 15th in receptions at the tight end position, led all tight ends in yards per reception. He ranked 2nd on the season in receiving touchdowns, yet ranked 23rd in red zone targets at the position. Yes, Drew Brees, he's an efficient quarterback in the red zone, but this team, it added new weapons. Emmanuel Sanders is the best receiver that they've had outside of Michael Thomas on the roster for a couple years now, and Alvin Kamara, when healthy and on the field, he demands a heavy target market share as well. As recent as 2018, Alvin Kamara ranked 4th in the entire league when it came to red zone targets, easily leading all running backs, so it's not like we can head into the season expecting Jared Cook to get a significant uptick in that type of volume. So in order for that pick to to pay off, he's going to need to maintain that efficiency. For us, we're really not trying to bank on a 33-year-old receiver performing like one of the league's best at the position. So while overall he may seem like a safe pick and somebody you should be targeting in your league, let somebody else reach on him. Jared Cook is definitely going to be overdrafted. Real quick guys, before we get into the next player, gotta shout out the draft package. The draft is just weeks away. If you're wondering which player we would draft and in what situation, you'll have access to the rankings. Not only that, you'll have the full list of all of our sleepers, targets, and busts. And if you were wondering about a player we may not have had a chance to bring up in a video, we have in-depth player breakdowns on all draftable players. There are loads of other benefits, consistency charts, risk ratings, offensive line grades, and more. So if that interests you, go to our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Link as always in the description box below. Up next, we have Leveon Bell of the New York Jets. You don't need me to tell you, Leveon Bell comes with a significant amount of name value. Since being drafted in 2013, he had never averaged anything less than 15 half PPR points. That was in his rookie season. In those years, the expectation for Leveon Bell was essentially 20 fantasy points per game. Unfortunately though, those days are over. While Leveon Bell is a very talented running back, it's undeniable that the Pittsburgh Steelers offense definitely boosted his production. Nearly every running back that we've seen that's been talented and thrust into that workhorse role has had a significant amount of success. The opposite can be said about the New York Jets. The last two fantasy relevant running backs coming out of the New York Jets camp were Matt Forte and Chris Ivory. Neither player was able to eclipse 13 fantasy points per game, and more often times than not, when thrust into the lineup, the odds were they were going to hurt you more than help you. There are a few factors you want to look for when targeting backfields. You want teams with strong defenses, teams that could potentially have leads late in games. That does directly lead to more volume. On the flip side, Leveon Bell, he did receive plenty of volume. His efficiency though, the worst of his entire career. Even with a strong defense, a running back typically can't do it all alone. A run game is always going to be enhanced by a successful passing game. While Leveon Bell, he definitely got the volume last season, he was not helped out by the offense by any means. And heading into the 2020 season, we can expect a lot more of the same. This offense struggles to consistently push the ball down the field. Defenses, they aren't afraid of the arm of Sam Darnold. Leveon Bell on paper was much more of a focus for the defense than that of some of their receivers. Jamison Crowder leading the way of the receiver position last season, and while they did add new weapons like Denzel Mims, Brashad Perriman, they also lost Robbie Anderson. It will be a shortened off season, limiting the reps and the potential chemistry needing to be gained for rookie receivers like Mims or free agent receivers like Perriman. Without a successful passing game, the run game is likely to struggle once again. Anyone who owned Leveon Bell last season, they were definitely disappointed, and we cannot say with confidence that we can expect anything better this season. Not only has the offensive roster lacked significant improvement needed to help boost the run game, their schedule, it's brutal. It was bad last season, but looking at the schedule this season, it has the potential to be even worse. Bills, 49ers, Broncos, Chargers, Patriots. That's 6 of their first 9 matchups, and if I'm a Bell owner, I am not excited about putting him in any one of those 6 contests. Due to draft capital, you're almost forced to do it either way, because how deep in the season could you actually go before replacing him with a bench player who may be outperforming what he's doing? It's tough to say. Even with those factors known though, you know that people in your league are going to be targeting Leveon Bell. When you see Lev Bell's name being drafted around RB20 and you think, oh, this is a guy that has potentially top 5 upside who may just be coming off of a down year, well, those that are just looking at the surface, that's exactly what they see. For those reasons and his name value, in several home leagues, that's going to cause him to be overdrafted. As for us, we're not falling into that trap. I'm not all around avoiding Leveon Bell. There is some value in volume, but we have him as RB22. If he lands there and I need a running back, I won't hesitate to pull the trigger, but I know in several leagues, I won't even have the opportunity to consider it because somebody in my league is going to be targeting him much earlier. The final player that we believe is going to be overdrafted is Daniel Jones of the New York Giants. Every year we are trying to find these late round quarterbacks that have the potential to break out, the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jacksons, and Daniel Jones, throw his name into that hat. this season he is a popular name to potentially be one of those guys. From what we saw from him last season, he did perform consistently, maybe not when it came to actually being a quarterback, but when it came to being a fantasy quarterback, he's exactly what we would be looking for. He averaged 17.9 fantasy points per game, virtually the same as Josh Allen, ahead of Kyler Murray. He was really good. So if you're telling me you could get the guy that performed as the QB 12 last season as the quarterback 14 this year, with the added bonus that we typically see quarterbacks take a massive step forward from year 1 to year 2, and on paper it almost seems like a no-brainer. Unfortunately though, Daniel Jones, he's a player that people are reaching on. It's pretty clear why. He's also coming into the season with all of his weapons, which he had never had as a starter. Saquon Barkley, Evan Engram, Sterling Shepard, Tate, and Slayton, none of which saw the field at the exact same time. For the first time in week 1, he will have that luxury. There's one downside though. Week 1, he faces Pittsburgh, easily one of the best defenses in the entire league. We could even see them improve to the number 1 defense in the entire league just due to having a more conducive offense. An offense that allows the defense to rest and not play the entire game on the field. Daniel Jones, unfortunately, does get to play them in week 1. And against good defenses, Daniel Jones struggles. Unless he takes that massive step forward, we can't count on him to produce in bad matchups. Last season, when he faced Minnesota, New England, Dallas, Chicago, and Green Bay, which essentially consisted of the best defenses he faced last season, his best performance was 14.7 points. 2 of those games were single-digit performances, 8.2 fantasy points, and 5.2 fantasy points. The floor for him, it gets extremely low. We know he has a fumbling issue. If things go bad, they go bad. It wouldn't necessarily be a massive deal if all he faced was the Steelers and he gets a couple more good matchups after that, but in week 2, he gets the Bears. The Bears matchup last season was the game in which he was able to post 14.7 fantasy points, and if you get anything near that point total from your quarterback position, you're gonna have a tough time winning your week. As for week 3, he faces the 49ers, so no, it doesn't get any better. Week 4, he does get the Rams, but then week 5, he's right on to Dallas, a team that had creamed him last season and has a very underrated defense. So once again, very much like Leveon Bell, you're going to be drafting a player to be a starter, but right off the bat, by putting him in the lineup, you can't have the same expectations that you had pre-draft when trying to project him out for the entire season. Daniel Jones very well could end up on the waiver wire, or even better, trade something much less valuable for him after his stock has already fallen. But guys, that's gonna do it for this video. We really hope you enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting that like button? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.